Madam Deputy Clerk, it is 7:26. I'm going to call this public planning meeting to order. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Kim, comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I will now read my public planning meeting statement. Welcome to Aurora's public planning meeting. The purpose of this public meeting is to inform the public and obtain public input regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and draft plan of condominium. For the planning application that will be considered by council tonight, the following process will occur. 1, town planning staff will outline the purpose of the planning application being considered. 2, then the applicant will be given an opportunity to make a presentation and address issues raised in the staff report or public concerns already filed. 3, following these presentations, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns respecting the proposal. And 4, either town staff or the applicant will answer your questions. I will keep track of the questions, and when I have several, I will direct them to whoever can best answer them. It is very important that the town receive the correct names and addresses of individuals having an interest in the planning application. Therefore, if you plan to speak to council at this meeting, or if you wish to be notified of any further council or committee meetings concerning the application being considered, you must complete one of the green interested party forms and give it to our committee coordinator sitting at the front. Under the Planning Act, the applicant or residents have the right to appeal any decision of council on a planning application to the local planning appeal tribunal, but you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town prior to council adopting an amendment. The tribunal may dismiss all or part of an appeal made in respect of an application. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information are being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This will help our town clerk prepare accurate minutes and to create a record that is available to the general public, including the town's website. Questions about this collection should be directed to the town clerk, Town of Aurora. I will now ask the Deputy Town Clerk to confirm that notification to the public occurred as required by the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Respecting item 1, PDS 19-095, application for zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and draft plan of condominium, Bing Rong Hee and Kai Ping Shen, 15385 and 15395 Bayview Avenue, file numbers ZBA-2019-03, SUB-2019-01, CDM-209-02. On September 5th, 2019, a notice of complete application was published in the Aurora Banner and the Aurora newspapers. Also, on October 3rd, 2019, a notice of public planning meeting was published in the Aurora Banner and Aurora newspapers and mailed to all addressed property owners within a minimum of 120 meters of the subject lands. And a notice of public planning meeting sign was posted on the subject lands. Public notification has been provided in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. I will now ask the Director of Planning and Development Services to begin with the presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll start off with Matthew Peverini, who will provide some planning information regarding the proposal, and then we'll turn to the planning consultant, who will provide details about the proposal itself.
Thank you. Matthew?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and members of the public. We're here tonight to discuss the subject development applications at the properties municipally known as 15385 and 15395 Bayview Avenue. The owners of the subject lands have submitted applications for zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and draft plan of condominium to the town. The owners propose to rezone the subject lands to facilitate the development of a common elements condominium consisting of 15 freehold townhouse dwelling units serviced by a private road. A future part lot control application to the town will be required to further subdivide the townhouse blocks into individual units. The proposed development has been exempted from site plan control in accordance with bylaw 6106-18, being a bylaw to designate a site plan control area. This bylaw provides that development of townhouse dwellings may be undertaken without the approval of plans and drawings otherwise required under subsections 41.4 and 41.5 of the Planning Act. A decision was made to allow the proposal to proceed without site plan approval on the basis of it being a small-scale application proposing 15 units. The amending zoning bylaw and draft plan of condominium applications adequately regulating the siting of the proposed townhouse blocks. The application is subject to an urban design peer review process, and this process will ensure a compatible built form and desirable site layout, and approved drawings will form part of the subdivision and condominium agreement to be registered on title. The subject lands are located on the east side of Bayview Avenue, south of River Ridge Boulevard. The subject lands consist of 2 lots of record and are approximately 0.34 hectares in size, or 0.85 acres, with a lot frontage of approximately 61 meters. To the immediate north and east of the subject lands are town-owned open space lands, which consist of stormwater management ponds. To the immediate south are single detached and townhouse dwelling units, and to the west is Bayview Avenue and the Aurora Center Commercial Plaza. The subject lands are currently occupied by 2 single detached dwellings, a detached garage, and 4 sheds. Access to the lands are via 2 driveways off of Bayview Avenue. Several trees and vegetation is also present on the lands, and the lands have a relatively flat topography. The proposed applications will be reviewed in the context of all provincial, regional, and municipal legislation and policy documents as outlined on this slide. The subject lands are located within the Town of Aurora Bayview Northeast Area 2B Secondary Plan, also known as Official Plan Amendment Number 30, or OPA 30. As shown in red on this slide, the subject lands are designated medium to high density residential by OPA 30. The proposed townhouse built form is a permitted use within this designation. As shown in red on this slide, the subject lands are currently zoned RU Rural Zone by the Town of Aurora Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 6000-17 as amended. And the applicant is proposing to rezone the lands to townhouse dwelling residential exception zone. The proposed exception zone will seek a site-specific permissions to allow for 15 townhouse dwelling units, reduced minimum lot area requirements, reduced front, rear, and side yard setbacks, and increases in height and lot coverage. All proposed amendments are outlined in the public planning report. As mentioned, the proposed draft plan of subdivision and draft plan of condominium applications will facilitate a common element condominium development. The development consists of 2 4-story townhouse blocks totaling 15 freehold townhouse units. These are delineated as Block 1 and Block 2 on the slide. A common elements component, which is delineated as Block 3, will include a private road, 5 visitor parking spaces, and the landscaped area surrounding the parking. Block 4 on the plan is to be conveyed to York Regions for purposes of potential future road widening. On this slide are just some conceptual elevation renderings for the proposed buildings. At the top left of the screen is Block 1 on the plan in the previous slide. That will be the block facing Bayview Avenue. On the bottom left is the front elevation of Block 2, which will be fronting the private road. And on the right is the flanking elevation of Block 1 that will be facing Bayview Avenue. Again, the proposed buildings are subject to the urban design peer review process. A complete first submission has been submitted to the town and circulated for review. Comments have been provided to the applicant. General comments on the first submission are outlined on this slide. Ongoing discussion regarding overall design and site of the buildings, vegetation on site, and engineering matters will be resolved through further resubmission. Staff have not received comments from the public prior to the statutory public planning meeting. And to conclude for next steps, staff will take comments received from tonight's discussion and provide council with a report at a future general committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Now we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. With me tonight is Kai Ping Chen, one of the owners of the property. Mr. Pavarini has done a fairly thorough job presenting the proposal, so I'll touch on a few points. They are referring to the project as the Wellingbrook Towns. Mr. Pavarini touched on the surrounding land uses. There's an aerial photo. The two properties are shown with the blue dots on the east side of Bayview. You can see the municipal property surrounding the subject lands on the north and the east side. Again, single family, and to the south of that, townhouses, and across to the west is the two commercial plazas. Again, these are pictures of the existing buildings on site. This is a picture showing the, I believe it's a single-family dwelling immediately south of the subject property at 15385 Bayview. Mr. Pavarini has gone over the official plan and zoning. Again, proposal is for two townhouse blocks. Each townhouse would be 4 stories high, 8 units in the one block, 7 in the other block, total of 15. Conforms to your official plan. I'll speak in terms of general conformity. Speaks to your conformity to your official plan. In terms of the land use, there are other certain site aspects that we need to talk about with your staff, and we'll do that following this public meeting. This is a preliminary landscape plan illustrating some tree planting around the perimeter of the property as well as on the private road. In your official plan, not specifically in this designation, but you do use the 45-degree angle, which is I've seen used elsewhere for determining impact of shadow casting, and in this particular case, using the red line, taking it from the on the right-hand side, taking it from the top of a typical 6-foot privacy fence, we projected the 45-degree angle up, and you'll see it just touches the southerly limit of what would be the westerly block. The easterly block is further back and would have more sunlight coming through that direction. Again, this is the units that would front onto Bayview. This is the south end of the units that would front onto Bayview. These are the units that are to the east, so they front onto the private road. Several agencies have submitted comments. Most of them I thought were fairly positive and certainly things that we can work with. And as I said earlier, we'll arrange through Mr. Pavarini to meet with people on your staff and other agencies as may be required to address those over the next month or so. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now ask if there are any members of the public that would like to come up and speak. Well, can you just state your name, your address? You have 5 minutes.
I'm Adam Lem. I live at 215 Zolkle Drive, just adjacent to the property in question. And it's a great looking plan. I got a couple questions for you guys about what's kind of lighting is going to be on that property there. The parking, so the visitor parking adjacent to the backyards of the houses that are actually right adjacent to the property. How high are they going to be? How bright are they going to be? I saw a plan for the vegetation they're going to plant on the property, but there's some very mature trees on that property and along the border lines. And usually what happens is that they just knock everything down and put little things in, and that provides no cover or shade or any kind of distraction from that kind of lush vegetation that's in that area. There's an amendment going in for reducing the setbacks from the property lines. And, they put those things in for a reason. I'm just, I get they want to jam 15 units in there, but does that make sense? It's a lot of property on a little piece of land. Sight lines, that's a big building, 16 meters tall, 4 stories. It's, I get it. There's only 3 houses along that section that are actually being affected. Everything else is just water retention. But they're putting property in hardscape everywhere, and there's like little strips of land around because there's no setbacks. So where's all that storm runoff going? Right to where? Where's that headed? I don't know. There's more intelligent people that plan this stuff, but. And I just had a quick question for somebody about, how long is this construction going to take? Because, it's a built-up area. I mean, there's only a couple people there, but still. And is there a plan for any of the noise and dust control when that's happening? Because they're going to excavate that property and grade it. It's going to be a disaster for us anyways. And we're just a little young family in town here, just wanting to know what's going on.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Waters, I have a few questions. So, lighting, does our applicant want to speak to that? Lighting, I guess overall, and then lighting by the visitor parking as well.
Yes, the typical requirement is for a photometric plan to be undertaken. In this case, our lighting consultant is eLumen, which is a professional firm. So they would, through their analysis, they ensure that there's no lighting that carries over onto the neighboring properties. The actual form of the lighting, the standards, what they'll look like, is something that'll be discussed with your staff. But we're not at that point at this time.
Okay. And trees on the south end of the property?
Yes,
What's the tree management plan look like? Are the trees going to be removed? Or
most of the trees will have to be removed. Where we can, we'll try and save those trees, but that'll be with the direction of an arborist. And again, working with your staff, whether there's tree compensation in the form of replanting or cash in lieu, that's something we'll work out with staff.
Okay. And how long will construction take?
I can't predict that.
Do you have an estimate, roughly?
Once they start developing, I would say probably 3 to 4 months.
And noise, dust, I'm assuming that you'll put a construction mitigation plan in place?
We will do that, yes.
Okay. Mr. Waters, did you?
Through Mr. Mayor, the only other question the resident raised was regarding setbacks and the fact that there is relief being requested from the setbacks from Bayview.
So it's not uncommon to bring buildings closer to the street. Your planning staff has raised that issue relative to the zoning and the massing, and that's something that we'll sit down and talk to them about to see if we can accommodate some of those anyways.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask, I'll go again. If you want to come up and speak again, that's fine. Or you're good? Okay. Matthew? You're good? Okay. So I will close the public portion of the meeting. Council, if you have any questions at this time for the applicant, not to the item. So if you have a specific question for the applicant, now's the time. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. to the applicant. So I did notice the big number there of 16 meters. I don't recall other similar type of townhouses being that tall, but is that just because of the zoning allows 16 meters, or is the townhouse actually going to be 16 meters high?
I think the zoning currently has a height of 10 meters, if I recall.
Sorry, the amendment.
The amendment, we're asking for 16 to accommodate a 4-story building. The 4-story building is permitted in your official plan, which permits, for example, stacked townhouses and small apartments. So we think what's being proposed certainly fits with what your official plan is directing us to. A 4-story building wouldn't fit in a 10-meter, which is in the zoning bylaw, it wouldn't fit in a 10-meter height. So we're going to need some flexibility there. Now, whether we can bring the roof line down somewhat so that the 4th floor is within the roof infrastructure, that's something that we'll take a look at, and that would help, I think.
Counselor?
Sorry, I should also point out, we've also been asked if we could drop a floor by going into having a basement, but the soils on those properties are not, they're not suited to that, so we've been advised by our geotech person to if we can, to do it on grade rather than having the basements.
Counselor?
Thank you. And, one thing that, I regret in previous public planning meetings is that, I give the benefit of the doubt that builders, we ask them to come up with a different elevation, different material, or something totally different, because, I regret a lot of the major construction and the homes that are built along our major roads, that front our major roads, because it is an entryway to Aurora. And I think if you know Aurora, Aurora residents are very proud of their municipality, and I found, unfortunately, in the last 10, 15 years, that there's structures being put up that are very unappealing to the eye. And we've approved plans in public planning in hopes that they would change the elevation in GC and then council, but they're very minor changes that really didn't do anything to the aesthetics. And even though it may fit in with the OP or the OPA, and this and that, the critical thing is what are residents proud of, and we don't want another suburban townhouse or suburban house that looks no different from anywhere else. And so my question is there an opportunity to do a wholesale change of the elevation between now and if we're to allow this to go to GC?
Well, certainly this process allows for that. Your planning staff has requested, and we've participated in a peer review by the planning partnership. I haven't seen the results of that yet, so we'll take that under consideration as well. I'm not sure through what forum you're proposing that information would come to us as to what would be acceptable, but certainly we can consider, if you have some ideas you want to provide us or some examples, we can look at that.
Yeah.
Counselor?
Yeah, thank you. When I go to, if you're driving through Woodbridge or Vaughan or Markham, they have pretty nice looking, unique, whether it be Victorian, Georgian style or some kind of Nouveau style. There's something unique about the architectural designs that they purchased from their generic architects. And what I see here is no different from some of the other projects that's come before us, and I'm just kind of tired of seeing the same thing. And if anything, the architecture that we have in town brings us down compared to anywhere else. And so I want to be in a place where I'm proud to live in, and what I see here is definitely not that. So I like something significantly different.
Counselor?
Thank
I'm
you.
just going to ask if you have a question. I'm sure you can make those
Sorry,
comments during the item.
Sorry, I've just got, looking
I know
at this.
I know you're,
Yeah.
I
That's
will
fine.
take those comments under advisement, though.
thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Couple questions. One was, and you probably don't really have much of an answer for it right away, but I know the resident did ask about the stormwater management plan, and if you had some preliminary thoughts in mind.
Part of our submission is a stormwater management facility. So on a site like this, we would have an underground storage facility. So it's not like you have to have surface facilities. You can build them underground as well, which is quite common with this type of density. So again, we've submitted it to your staff for review. It's a system that works elsewhere. I'm not aware of any comments suggesting otherwise. We also have to work with the Conservation Authority in terms of infiltration and water balance. So those comments, I understand, were just received today. I haven't seen them. So again, we'll work with staff and Conservation Authority.
Okay.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I just had a question about the parking spaces, more or less the size of the driveway, how much parking's in the garage. Just looking at the amount of visitor parking, there's only 5 spaces. I've been in these kind of communities before where there's private driveways for these condo towns or whatever you want to call them, but yet very, very little parking just for the people living there, never mind the visitors. And I was wondering if you can kind of expand on that.
One of the things we asked the architect to look at was because I understand your point that, for example, many people that have a parking space in a garage use that for storage rather than parking. And what we've done is asked that they provide a full space beside the car that would park, so they have storage space on their ground floor as well as room for parking. So I think that's important. That's not often the case.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, we've provided for the required number of spaces pursuant to your zoning bylaw.
Councillor.
So, thank you. So there's extra parking, not parking, there's extra storage in the garage. It's
In
kind of
the
like an
garage.
extra wide garage. It's not where
That's
you open
right.
the doors and you hit the side and you're
Exactly.
afraid to get out
Yes.
with the tennis ball there, so you're perfect. Is there any parking as far as outside the driveway in addition to that? So you could park 2 cars? So one in the driveway and one...
These are single car driveways, so there's really room for one in the driveway, one in the garage.
That's what I'm saying. So one in
Yeah.
the garage, one in
Yeah.
the driveway. So you can fit 2.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay.
I guess finally, I'm just curious, how many stairs is this going to have?
We haven't prepared floor plans, so you'll have to be in shape, I think, to.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gal.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out. I don't know if it's a question but a comment, but at least I want it to be heard in terms of height of the building. That's probably my number one concern. An additional 6 meters, some 20 feet above what's being allowed, is quite significant. It's at least for me something that would need to be addressed before I could support it. Particularly, the massing just seems quite vast, and there's a reason why we put 10 meters, even though in the official plan, which as you mentioned is contradictory, you can't do 4 stories and 10 meters. So something's got to give. But as it stands, I have some pretty serious issues with 16 meters.
Thank you.
I think Siri has a problem with the 16 meters as well. Siri from Aurora? I don't know. Oh. Wow. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gallo. I ask this of everyone. Why not 10 meters? Why not come with a proposal that meets it comes within our OP?
Well, your OP,
I know you're going to tell me about the 4 stories, but why not
Okay.
a 10? Why not a 10 meter?
Well, in part because of the soils here. Now, we'll go back and speak to the geotech. If we can go with the basement and maybe bring it down, if we can bring down the roof structure a bit, we'll get closer to the 10 meters.
So I mean, I guess where I'm going is why not build, if it didn't need a basement, why not build just the 3-story?
Well, we're trying to accommodate the exact point about the storage in the garages. So to have 2 parking spaces, we think the ground floor needs some extra storage space. So the actual living rooms will be on the 2nd and 3rd.
Okay, and then I'm just wondering, was there any consideration given to possibly flipping the development? So it would be the total opposite way, and then maybe you can save some of the trees on the south end.
Well, certainly we can look at that. The concern I had was the relationship between this development and the neighbors to the south. So we wanted to use the driveway and that as spacing from the neighbors. Bringing it, we can look at it, but bringing it to the south puts them right up to their backyards.
And I don't know, I guess I would have to have a conversation with the residents, but I from my opinion, I think that if you flipped it, if you had the trees that were still there to provide some shade and provide a buffer, that might be better than just an empty roadway that would have light shining in and have some saplings sitting around for about 10 years before they actually grow. So, I mean, I might be wrong, but that might be a viable option to provide that shade and still keep those trees there instead of cutting them down. So it's maybe something to look at. That's all my questions. I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, if someone would like to move the recommendation. Councillor Gilliland, someone like to second it? Nobody wants to second? Someone want to, for discussion? Yeah, we can always, yeah. Do you want to second it for discussion? Okay, thank you, Councillor Gallo. We'll second it for discussion. Comments or questions? Councillor Kim, did you want to speak now? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I think I heard something about a site plan and the necessity or the not needing it because of the size of the project. Could you elaborate on that? And I may have misheard, but in terms of the site plan, what's the status? Will a site plan be coming back to council should this proceed?
Matthew?
Through the chair, as of right now, a site plan application will not be coming back to council for consideration. Bylaw number 6106-18 provides that townhouse dwellings may be undertaken without the approval of plans and drawings otherwise required under section 41.4 and 41.5.1 or 41.5 of the Planning Act, which is a site plan control portion of the Planning Act.
So, is that something that's subjective that staff is recommending, or I mean, is that something that council can say, we'd like to see a site plan?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because of the size of the development, the decision was made that we did not require a site plan as per the site plan control bylaw. It provides for an exemption for single semis and townhouses. However, if the direction is from council to request that a site plan be submitted, then that will have to be followed by the applicant.
Councillor Gallo?
Yeah, I think.
No, we're actually, sorry, yeah.
I think that, to me, in terms of its location and size and impact, I think, at least from my perspective, that's something that we should definitely be doing. Also, I mentioned the height. The department comments and agencies comments. The first point there is compatibility and appropriateness. So, and those are things we're still determining. Will all of those answers be completed and reported on during the next phase, should it proceed and come to GC? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. We will deal with the planning review of these issues and any others that have that are identified through the circulation comments. They'll be fully addressed in the report to GC.
And is height and architectural design going to be part of that in terms of compatibility and appropriateness?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, height and massing will be addressed in the report to deal with compatibility issues.
And
Councillor?
a design review committee or consultant was referred to. Do we not have a design review committee in the town of residents, staff, and was it filtered through that, or is that still to happen?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a design review panel, which was recently initiated. We have taken development applications through that process. In this case, we've used our peer reviewer, which is a planning partnership, to provide design review comments, which essentially is the same as the design review panel, so we'll get the same product at the end of the day.
Councillor?
I think the difference is that this design review panel is residents of Aurora, for the most part. Maybe some not of Aurora, but it's a representation of non-professionals, volunteers, as opposed to professional planners that the planning partnership. I mean, the point of it is to give a perspective from, we'll say professionals because I think they are, but not necessarily a firm that we hire. And I think there's a difference there, and we struck the committee for, in my view, for this very purpose, to look at these types of applications and give us their feedback. So not to delay it, but I'm curious as to why we wouldn't have filtered this through them.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean that's an option we can pursue. There's nothing that prevents us from bringing this forward to the design review panel to get a different perspective on urban design.
Councillor?
Because I share Councillor Kim's concerns, and you know, these things need to be done right because they don't go away anytime soon, and you see them day after day after day after day. So let's do our best at least to get it right, because I mean, appearance and architecture is subjective. Let's face it. What you like, I might not like, but we try to hit a middle ground if we can. Now, in terms of timing, do we have time to go through all of this, come back at a GC and council prior to any of the timelines stipulated in the report? Is it a reasonable time frame?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's our intention to report back within the timelines for review. And I believe that we can satisfy those requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor? Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As everyone mentioned, I think the 16 meters is one item that really sticks out from a physical perspective, and I know the applicant said that they'd look at potential sub-basement aspect of the townhouse development. I think that's a pretty substantial change, and I think also the aesthetics. I'm not just talking about just your stereotypical builder kind of changing the facade. it may be costly, and I don't think something like that is going to. I would prefer not to move it forward to GC until the height and the aesthetics are answered for. And even if we go to the design review panel, like Councillor Gallo said, most professional designers will say, is it bearable? I think it's a pretty low threshold from some of the design teams that I've seen and heard from. Is it bearable? Because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If I'm not going to move with the staff recommendation, and I'll wait for anyone else to speak, and otherwise I'd like to put an amendment to bring this back to another public planning.
Thank you, Councillor Kidd. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Taking in all the comments from my colleagues here, I find them all very interesting and wholeheartedly agree with much what you're saying. But I wanted to ask Mr. Waters if are there any other townhome developments in Aurora that are 4 stories?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any 4-story townhouses. I know some of the townhouses on Wellington on the north side, just east of Bayview, are quite tall, but I don't believe they're 4 stories in height. Perhaps Mr. Peverini can comment on that.
Matthew?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any 4 stories. However, they are a more common built form nowadays, given the sizes of available sites and infill development. There are the ones along Bayview that are 3 stories, but because of the Wellington and Bayview area, because of the grading, they appear 4 stories from Wellington, but in behind on, I believe it's Sokol, they're actually 3. So there is some taller built form, but generally 3 to 4 stories. Those ones also have basements, I believe.
Councillor?
Do we happen to know what the height is on those developments?
Matthew?
Through the chair, if you can give me a minute, I can check the zoning bylaw permissions.
Thank you.
Councillor?
I'm asking because I just want to kind of understand kind of the general area, and I know that it is in the same area of Bayview and Wellington, and just keeping in conformity, and I just really need to understand what we're mixing. And I guess the question of Mr. Waters is that part of Bayview as well recognized as part of the greater growth area?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe it is. That would be designated as part of the urban area, but it's not a growth or strategic growth area or an MTSA or anything like that.
Councillor?
I want to understand a little bit better about the 4-story kind of analogy with the OP. So if the gentleman was going to build a 4-story apartment building versus a 4-story townhome versus a 10-meter townhome development, what is the analogy here that's being explained?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can only sort of speculate as to why they've gone 4 stories, and I think you've heard that. They don't have the soil conditions to dig basements, which means that your first floor basically is your basement in terms of what would go there. They need the height to essentially achieve the square footage that they're looking for.
Councillor?
Within the current zoning that they're asking, are they also asking, could they decide I'm going to do a 4-story apartment building instead of 4-story town? Is it the same, 2 of the same?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe they'd have to select a different zone category. The R8 zone is typically for townhousing. The applicant has decided to propose a townhouse built form, but with a 4-story height.
Councillor?
Thank you. I'm just trying to really understand what the options here are and where we're going forward. Just comment about the design as well. And I know this is the eye beholder, and I did look at it. My first impression was like, wow, here's a big wall. And I would hope that there is some sort of delicacy to the design concept of it. Aurora is very proud. I think that we can all attest there are some townhome developments that are rather new where In Aurora, we go, oh, not those, because you can literally drive down the street south, town to town, and they're the exact same ones. And it doesn't really make it very unique. And I would hope that with some of the development that is being presented, especially if you're asking something beyond, that there would be some good architectural benefit to the community that make it feel that was desirable. I don't know if the trade-off is at 16 meters. I'm not so sure that I'm sold on that as of yet. But I do kind of echo that uniqueness that we're kind of looking for, and just kind of meet in the middle a little bit and not just try and stick 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound bag. That's the analogy I like to use. But I understand that you are trying to make the most of the square footage, but I guess kind of asking, give a little. Do you have
Councillor?
I'm just waiting if I could get the
Matthew?
height.
Through the chair, the exception, or the R8 exceptions on 311 prescribes a maximum height of 12.2 meters.
Thank you.
Councillor?
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think across the board we're hearing there's issues with the height, the massing. I agree with Councillor Gallo. I'd like to see the site plan come back. So if, Mr. Waters, I'm not sure do you need us to actually put that in? Okay, so we'll look to do that, because I think I'm fully supportive of doing that. You know what, I do have, Councillor Kim, you may bring a great point up. I mean, we've sat here so many times, and how many we've seen, how many applications have we seen where we've said that, you know what, that's not appealing to us, to our community, to the residents, and we would like to see some changes. And they come and they make some minor changes, whether they go from black brick to red brick, and it's not really what we're looking for. And when we're talking about a certain look and feel in our community, we're talking about an architectural look. I mean, I get it. It's some might say we're being picky here in Aurora, but at the end of the day, I think it's what our community wants. They want us to be picky. They want us to make sure that we ensure that what's being built fits within our community. It looks like what we want. You know, I have big issues with the height, and I'm sure that's not a surprise to anyone sitting around this table or even anyone listening. You know. We can work on it, we can be flexible, but I don't see the benefit to the community to give 6 meters. If there's a clear-cut benefit, then we can have those discussions and say, listen, the community is getting something out of this, and so therefore that's why we're making that big of an amendment to that. That's a huge amendment. It's not a little thing in my mind. Parking is an issue. Councillor Gilliland, you brought it up. To me, it's an issue. We all know what's going to happen down the road. We've seen it happen. The ones that got built on Yonge and Wellington. Also, we brought up those comments, and Councillor Kim will remember that. We brought those comments up saying there's going to be issues with parking in there. There's not enough parking. There's not enough visitor parking. There's not enough parking for the people that are going to be living there. And Matchell Street is going to get overwhelmed with people parking on it. And we were told by the consultant at the time that, you know, and I've said it before, we've never met a parking consultant that doesn't say that there's enough parking. They all say there's enough parking. But truly, we're the ones that live here, and we understand what goes along in the community. And there's not going to be enough parking in there. And you know, maybe it's a reduction in the number of units. Maybe, you know, there's a reduction in the height. But we need to work together to come to a common place where we can move forward. Because, you know, is something there, change required that would be better than what's currently there? Yeah, I think that we can all agree we'd like to see that area change. But not with what we're looking in front of us at this moment, unfortunately. But saying that, I do agree we have an obligation, as I've said before, and Councillor Gallo, you brought it up as far as the timing. We have an obligation to move forward on this. The last thing I would hate is to see this go to LPAT and for someone to be making a decision to move ahead and allow something to be placed in our community that maybe we don't agree with, but it's been taken out of our hands. So I rather at least try to work with the applicant at this time and at least move it to GC. And if we get the GC and we can't work together and we're still butting heads, then we can deny it as a council at that time. So that's why I'm still willing to move forward to a GC, and hopefully the applicant hears the comments from this council, takes them into consideration, works with staff, works with the residents in the area, and we find that common ground, and we can move forward at that time. And if not, we say no. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Gallo.
For some clarity in terms of, let's say we chose to go to a public planning. How does the timing look for that? Our next one would be end of November. The timelines here are mid to end of December.
So I, and Mr. Waters can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that it would be end of November, the next public planning, if it could possibly get to us by then. And then we only have one cycle in December, which would be December 18th.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd be past that deadline. For a zoning bylaw amendment application to LPAT. They can appeal the zoning bylaw amendment application to LPAT after December 1st.
December 1st. Yeah.
So we'd be past that deadline. And that's my concern. So, Councilor Gallo. Did you?
No, I mean, if that's what it is, that's what it is. The dates are the dates, right? Yeah, and I think that is the risk that we have, and the value to going to a public planning is basically to have the public exercise their right to communicate more than once. Really, that's the only difference. Whereas at GC, they can still come, they can still, we can still hear their perspective, and we would have all of this in front of us, and it would be 2 cycles GC then council. So it would be 2 times that the public, should they choose. So I'm in favor of it going to GC and going through that cycle, and I would agree that if we don't like it then we just say so. I just don't think the timing works for another public planning.
Thank you, Councilor Gallo. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I understand that, we have those, the 120 days. It seems like today's LPAT system is really no different from the previous OMB system, where it's very adversarial. And I hope that this does not become adversarial, because it's, for a project this size, I don't think that's necessary. But I find that when we allow plans to move to GC, the consultant or the builders, their attitude is we're that much closer, and we don't have to, we come here, we can only make, we only need to make minor changes. But I'm fine with, I understand the rationale, and that was my concern too, and that, why not just move it along to GC, because we have every opportunity all the way to council if we decide to do a 180. But, I'm fine with moving this to GC, but I hope that, the applicant is, really heard what we said and really come back with some options regarding height and design. And we're not just talking small design, but give us 2 or 3 options that will wow us. People of different tastes, and so I'm fine with moving this to GC.
Thank you, Councilor Kim. Councilor Gallo, did you want to add in the site plan part?
I wanted to add in site plan as well as it filter through the design review panel.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, adding those additional processes onto the application will likely take us past the LPAT appeal dates. However, my experience is that applicants are typically willing to work with staff, even though the dates have approached regarding appeals, essentially because once the application is appealed, it sits there, it doesn't go anywhere. So I just want to put that out there for consideration.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't follow.
If we go through a design review panel and we submit a site plan application, the risk is that we likely will not be finished by the date the date for appeal becomes live. But as I said, applicants are typically willing to work with staff post the appeal date, because once an application is appealed, it just sits there until the OMB process or the LPAP process begins.
Councillor?
Well, it's just my view. I'm a stickler on those two issues, and I
So
mean,
did you-
to me, they're essential, and I need to have them, or I won't even be supporting it going to GC.
So did you want to add that as an amendment?
Those two items, the
So that a
site
site
plan,
plan and for it to go to the design review panel as
Yeah.
well?
and some. No, it's unfortunate that the decision was made to remove those two items. I don't believe they should have, but that decision was made, and now we're in this situation.
Fair enough. Any comments or questions to the amendment? For a site plan application, to go through site plan application and for it to go through the design review panel. Councillor Gilliland, to the amendment. One second. Oh, here, go ahead.
Can you explain a little bit the process of the design panel and how that works on a timeline?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe our next design review panel is scheduled for early November. And so we will we have the applicant there, they will present their proposal to the design review panel, and we will discuss it and generate comments on the proposal.
Councillor?
And these comments will be presented at GC?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they will be summarized at GC, and will advise how they have influenced the redesign of the massing of the building.
Councillor?
And the site plan, just to kind of understand, you're saying the applicant usually works with the timeline. Could you just kind of explain that a little bit and what the risk is involved in that?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my comment was that if we go through a site plan process, it will lengthen the time for us to report back to GC. However, as I said before, once an application is appealed, it essentially sits on the shelf until the OMB process or the LPAP process has commenced. So I'm not sure applicants want to sort of risk that sort of delay. So they will work with staff, even though the timelines have expired regarding non-appeal. Period.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you.
Matthew, did you want to add to that?
Through the chair, just to comment on the design review panel, the next meeting would be December 2nd,
Ooh.
so not November. So that would push it beyond the deadline. Further, if I can add any level of comfort to council's concerns, I have provided some lengthy comments with regards to the massing, the height, and the proposed layout. This does address a lot of Councillor Kim's and Councillor Gallo's concerns, and as a matter of fact, I actually have provided the applicant with an example out of Vaughan with regards to the type of built form that they've kind of adopted, one that encompasses the perhaps the fourth floor into the ceiling, the one that has basements, breaks up the facade with stone and brick, so not typical to a lot of what you're seeing along Bayview and Wellington, which is the stucco and the earth tone colors. Further, again, this is going through a peer review process with the planning partnership. Wai Ying, who is on the Wai Ying, who works with the planning partnership, actually is on the design review panel as well. So there is some kind of overlap there and some assurity in what kind of comments we will be getting. In addition, staff will be working with the applicant to finalize a elevations, massing, and a conceptual site plan. This will form part of the subdivision and condominium agreement as the form of schedules. So prior to pulling a building permit, should it get to that stage, the applicant will have to comply with what has been approved. if that does add any level of comfort.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm just going to ask Councillor Gallo. Councillor Gallo, with that information, I'd be comfortable removing the design review panel part of it, but I would like to still see the site plan application. And I don't know how you feel after hearing that, but I'll ask you. Councillor Gallo?
I'm okay with that simply because I think we'll accomplish a lot of what we want to accomplish and actually see what we want to accomplish through the site plan. And we'll see elevations and materials and all that kind of stuff. And then at that point, really,
So,
you can say yes or no. So,
so are you okay to remove the design review panel part?
redundant. I don't really want to,
I-
but I think the position that we've been put in, I'm not sure we have a choice, but there is some comfort that one of the same people are part of the planning partnership and on the design review panel.
Okay, so can we remove that? Is the seconder, Councillor Kim, you okay with that? Thank you. Matthew, also, is it possible just internally to maybe send that, the Vaughan one, the example, that you have to council? Is it possible to get that? So just so we can get a look at that ahead of time? Just to kind of like what the thought is?
Through the chair, sure.
Okay. I think everyone would appreciate just kind of having a look at that at some point before this even comes back. So to get that example, so that would be great. All right. Any other comments or questions to the amendment? And we've removed the design review panel part of it. So it's just that a site plan application be submitted. Okay. Call the vote. That carries. And back to the main motion as amended. You did have the floor. Do you still want to speak? You're fine? Okay. Any other comments or questions while we wait for this? No? All right. All right, I'll call the vote, council. And that carries. Conforming bylaw. Someone like to move that? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gallo. Call the vote. That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Kim, Councillor Gilliland, all those in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming out.